Okay. Well, thanks for having me today. Thanks to all the sponsors and the organizers for putting together this event. Today I have the privilege to talk to you guys about next generation front-end testing with Cypress. Let's just get right into it. My name is Amir Rustamzadeh. I do work for Cypress. I'm a recent hire there. That's my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or anything like that. One thing I do want to mention is that I'm not just giving this talk because I work at Cypress. I actually proposed this talk before I worked at Cypress. So between the time I proposed this and now, I got hired there. And so what I'm telling you now is truly from the bottom of my heart. I think this is a great testing tool that can do a lot of good for a lot of developers. So yeah, let's get right into it. And but before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty parts of what Cypress is and how it works and how it can help you, let's kind of step back and look at web development as a whole and where Cypress fits into that. So let's look at like the recent history of web development. Let's say in the past 20 years or so. Around 2005, we had cool frameworks like Django and Rails come out. And they made making a service on the web much simpler, much easier, much more accessible. And then we got cool services like Twitter and Shopify and things like that. Those were all like Rails apps. And then a little bit later, we had things like jQuery, which kind of brought some sanity to the web. All the web browser standards weren't really synced up. So jQuery helped a lot with that, and it made development much easier, much more accessible. And between that time and now, JavaScript got its act together, and we got much fancier frameworks. And also in between that time period, we had iOS and Android come out, and users' expectations of what an app should be and feel like also changed, right? So there was a lot more demand to build richer applications, and that's why we got things like Vue and React and Angular. And during this whole time frame, this great testing tool that's been out since 2004, it has been Selenium. We've been using it to do end-to-end testing, and that's what it was made to do. But it is getting a little outdated. It did come out 2004. That's when I started high school. So it's been a while, and the web has completely changed. So we do need to look at how we're testing our new modern applications. Another thing that happened here was that more complexity from the back end moved to the front end, right? Everything used to be just simple templates we sent down the wire. Browsers could easily render them, but now we're shipping big JavaScript applications, right? So we need something that's better suited for this kind of application. So Selenium has offered some solutions. There's some Selenium wrappers that make working with Selenium easier. Nightwatch is a popular one, and if you're using Angular, you might have used Protractor. But there is well, let's first look at the Selenium architecture and how it works. This is a gross oversimplification of the Selenium architecture. But it's there to make a point. So with Selenium, you write your tests in whatever language you like. These tests make requests to the Selenium server, and then the server makes requests to the browser to drive actions on the browser. As I said, this is an oversimplification. If you actually dive deeper, there's like 6 network hops between what you're saying and then what is actually going on. So there's a discrepancy. You have the classical syncing dilemma. You have 2 separate systems that are supposed to be in constant sync, but that's difficult because they're completely isolated from each other, and they only have this middleman to kind of keep them in sync. And what this leads to is flaky tests. Like, who here has had to deal with flaky tests before, right? There you go. All your hands are up. And this, the root cause of that is this architecture. And this flakiness is essentially non-determinism, right? Yeah. So some might say, okay, well, why don't I just use like JS DOM or some other version of DOM emulation? Well, the thing is, the whole point of end-to-end testing is to simulate real user actions, right? So none of your users are ever going to run JS DOM, right? Who here has users that uses JS DOM to do your application? There you go. So to do real end-to-end testing, you need to use a real browser so you can drive real user actions. And also, don't let your users be the first ones to do your end-to-end testing, right? So, if you're not doing end-to-end testing, you should start, even a little can go a long way. So that's why Cypress, now exists to kind of address some of these problems. It is completely free, it's open source, and it's on my MIT licensed. And so now let's look at how Cypress works, and let's look at its architecture. And this is also a gross oversimplification of the Cypress architecture. But it's vastly different than Selenium because Cypress runs within the same browser as your application. It runs within the same run loop, and it has some benefits. First, you're going to get native access to the DOM in your app, right? It's not like Selenium where it's this isolated server sitting outside and it's making queries essentially to the browser saying, hey, what's going on, buddy? Like, it's kind of like just knock, 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 knock. What's happening? But it's closed door, right? And it's limited by that API as well. And another benefit to this is that your tests are going to be much faster because you're running in the same run loop as your application. And you're not making like these requests over a middleman. Another aspect of this that's really nice is the automatic waiting feature. Who here has had to deal with just setting timeouts and waiting for things to happen? There you go. Cypress, you're really not going to be doing that much or ever. We have sane like default timeouts and things like that, and Cypress automatically waits and checks for things. So you just have to kind of write your tests and not worry about those little nitty-gritty details. And it also makes it's much more debuggable because everything is running in just a normal browser. You can pop up DevTools and you can use all the features it has right then and there. It's a familiar environment. But wait, there's still more. With all this, you still get like real-time reloading. So as you're changing your code, you can see Cypress automatically rerun tests, which is great for test-driven development. You get easy stubbing, mocking, spying. These are all the stuff you've grown to expect out of a testing framework. We even do automatic screenshots and recording, and we'll get to see that. And underneath, it uses Mocha, Chai, and Sign-On. So these are familiar tools. So it's not going to be completely new stuff. And you get this all in one tool. Okay, so let's actually just go ahead and see it a little bit, and then we'll get back to the slides. Okay, so all you got to do is you just got to go and do. You guys seeing all this? Let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, I think it's the lighting here. Yeah, can we turn off some lights? Is that cool? Front lights. Yeah, how many does it take to turn off the light? Yeah, there you go. Oh, yeah. All right. All right, now that everything's a little more romantic and sensual, we can get back to it. So let me zoom in a little more. Okay, all right. So, all you got to do is just npm install it to your dev dependencies. That's it. And then you're going to get Cypress. We ship all the dependencies and everything with it. So this is all you got to do. Obviously, I'm not going to test the network here. So I've already npm installed it. So once you've installed Cypress and you've ran it for the first time, which we're going to do it right now, actually. So let me just go ahead and do that. So you can do, well, for this one, we can just do, Okay, so Cypress is an executable in your node modules. That's why I'm doing npm bin. You can use npx or something like that. And you can also make shortcut scripts in your package.json to make this faster. So we're just going to go ahead and open Cypress. This is going to launch Cypress. It is an Electron application. So it does take a little bit to load for the first time. Okay. So this is the GUI of Cypress. So this is, once you install for the first time, you're going to get some kitchen sink examples, as you're seeing right here. And we've kind of separated them out and labeled them accordingly. And all you got to do to run any of this, you just go ahead and click on the spec file. And it's going to launch a version of Chrome. And it's going to run the specifications. So it's going in this particular specification file. We're just testing various Cypress commands like blur, focus, click. So that's it. So what we just saw is it ran through some tests, and you get to see things live on the right-hand side. And this is the look of the test runner. As I said, it is running in Chrome right here. So let's look at just how this is. If I click on any of these tests, it's going to show me every command it did to make this test happen. So first, it's going to go visit this URL, which is our example page, and then it's going to get this email input box, and then it's going to type fake@email.com, and then it's going to assert that that is the value that ended up in the input box. So this is the kitchen sink files that come with a fresh install of Cypress. So let's look at the folder structure. So the first time you run Cypress, it automatically scaffolds a base directory for your tests, and it's just going to call that folder Cypress, as you see right here. Can everyone see that? Yeah. So a Cypress, and then your tests are going to go in this integration folder. You can put all your specs there. You can organize them how you wish. There's also a fixtures folder, which you can put your fixtures, and we also you can actually write plugins for Cypress, but I won't get into that right now. And there's a support folder where you can write custom commands. So maybe you're doing a bunch of stuff repetitively, you just want to turn that into one command, you can do that. Or if there's anything specific you want to do that's specific to your application, you can run custom commands in this file right here. It's empty. Like a good example here is like the logging into your application. You can maybe just turn that into a simple command that can be done easily. Okay, so this was the kitchen sink version of it. But let's look at a real application. So many of you probably have seen to do MVC, right? It's kind of like a way to demonstrate various frameworks, and here we have the React version of that of to do MVC. So I'm just going to go ahead and in this one we have some shortcuts in the package JSON that helps with just launching Cypress. Okay, now here's the cool thing. Now, for me to test the application, the server needs to be running, right? And Cypress realizes that, and it tells me, hey, your server isn't running. Good, thanks Cypress. So now I can go and start my server. Great, now it's running. And I can just close that off. And here's the spec file for to do MVC. So again, it's going to open up Chrome. It's going to load the application. And then it's going to run. So again, it's doing a bunch of stuff. It's creating new to-dos, marking them complete, editing them. It's going through all the various permutations of this application. So while that's running, you guys did notice that the first one failed here, right? Now, Cypress, one of the things we're proud of is that we give very human-readable error messages. So when something goes wrong, you can come here and actually read the message like a human. And you know, you don't have to like copy paste it into Google and like hopefully someone actually knows what this means. So yeah, like a human, this is organic, vegan, you know, all that good stuff. So this is what it is. So the test that passed here was that when this application first loads, we want the input box here to be focused, right? That makes sense because you just want to go right ahead and, you know, add tasks to your to-do list. Now let's go see why that test failed. It is here. Okay, let's go to my app. Okay, I see right here is that this is the input box, and the autofocus for it is set to false. Well, that should be true. And then I'm just going to rerun, and boom, it's passing now. So so it's just going to run all the tests again. But now let's go over some other features of the test runner right here. So as you already know, on the left-hand side, I already showed that you can click on every test and see all the various commands that it ran during that test. We also have this other thing called the selector playground. You can click this right here, and you can hover over any element, and it will tell you what the selector for it is, and you can easily copy it, you know, put it in your tests. It's a very handy dandy tool that we like to use. So now let's look at the API and how things look like. So that first test we were playing around with, where we were just trying to see, okay, hey, is the input field focused when the app loads? Well, with Cypress, we have a command for that. All our commands start with sci, you know, for Cypress, and then the name of the command. So we're saying sci.focused. So what is the element that's currently focused? That's what this command does, and it should have the class new to do. That was it. And one thing to mention about Cypress commands, and one of the benefits of it, is that when you have your commands like this, like for example, you have cy.get, you're getting an element and you're making an assertion on it, and you're doing that 3 times for 3 different elements. Cypress sees this and it goes through your code, your test code right here, and it says, okay, I'm going to do this first, second, and third. It kind of orders them properly. And I have a little slide right here. That's a good example. So it goes through your code and it sees, okay, I should do this first, I should do this second, I should do this third, and make sure that this stuff happens in order. Now this is very important because that's how things can be deterministic, right? Because if everything was doing its own thing asynchronously, right, they wouldn't happen in order. We can't, you know, guarantee that they will all run in the order that we wish. So that's how Cypress runs its commands. And that leads to flake-free, consistent, and reliable tests. Another thing about Cypress is one of my colleagues, Gleb Balmatov, he's written various libraries for doing component unit testing. Now, what's component unit testing in Cypress? With these various libraries, you can take a component, let's say for a React app, right? You can take a button component, let's say you want to test that. You can just take that component and mount it into a real browser and test that component in isolation. And that's what we mean by component unit testing. So let's go ahead and see that a bit in action. So as I said, it's available in Vue, React, Angular. Notice how there's 2 Angulars. And then, you know, Hyper App and Cycle. But I'm going to be demonstrating the Vue version of this because it's my preferred cup of tea these days. So let's go ahead and look at that. So let's close this one out and let's take a look at this. Okay, so how does this work? Well, what the Cypress Vue unit test library does is it gives me a mount Vue function, and all I have to do is pass in my Vue component, and it will take that component and mount it for me, and then I can just do normal Cypress tests with it. So this is a simple button counter. Let's go ahead and run this one. I think this one is, oops. Okay, so here we're just going to run this button counter. Voila. It's a very, very simple. It increments, decrements, but this is a full-on Vue component. So now let's look at the actual code for it. All it did was I have this mount Vue function that Cypress Vue unit test provides me. I can import in my button counter component. In Vue, there's a concept of single file components. So I'm just importing that entire component as a module right here. And I just take that, and before my test runs, I say mount Vue button counter. That's it. At that point in time, my entire DOM is essentially this component, and I can just do as I wish like any other test. I'm going to assert that the button starts off with the value 0, and then when I hit click 3 times, it's going to now contain 3. So simple stuff. But here's where it gets a little cooler. Let me close this out. There's another spec right here, counter Vuex spec. Now this is another button incrementer and decrementer example. But now this is using Vuex, which is kind of like Redux, a central store for your app, to drive the values in there. But the cool thing is that I can directly manipulate the store, the Vuex store right here. So when using Cypress Vue unit test, I'm going to get access to the Vue instance right here. And Cypress provides that on the Cypress instance right here. And then I have access to the store value. And then I can get values from the store, or I can set values from the store, just like I would do in Vue. Now, as you can see, I have direct access to the DOM, and this otherwise wouldn't be possible. And this is cool because a lot of the times when you're testing something, like let's say you're testing a UI and you're clicking buttons, you're inputting stuff into fields to build up the state of your application, right? Well, you only need to do that once just to build up the state. Maybe for the second, third, fourth test that relies on that state, you can just, set that state directly with JavaScript. You don't have to go and click things and input stuff into boxes. You can just automatically set the state of your application programmatically. So that's a very nifty benefit of Cypress, and also using these testing library helpers. Okay, so far we've been seeing Cypress run as a GUI application, right? But it also runs headlessly. So this to-do MVC app, let's take a look at it. Let's open it up again. Actually. So Cypress has 2 modes, headless and not headless. And we need headless because we want to run things in CI, right? So here's the app. And then if you click on runs here, right? I've done it once a couple times already. Yeah. So if this hadn't run a couple of times, when you go into runs, you're going to get a project ID, and a record key. And let's see how those get used. So I'm going to close this out now. Then I'm going to... So now we're going to see how we can use the headless mode and how it relates to the dashboard. So Cypress, we provide a dashboard that helps with when you're running things in CI, right? So right now I've been running things in a pretty browser, and right in front of you, you get to see everything right in front of you, so you can visually inspect things. But when things are running in CI, you can't see anything, right? You need a way to actually be like, okay, what happened? What's going on? So, so that's what the dashboard kind of helps. So let's get out of here. And I've been using the Cypress open command to open the GUI version. But when I want to just run things headlessly, I just do Cypress run. And that runs Cypress headlessly. So it's going to start, and it's going to run the same tests as before. Bada bing, bada boom, it's doing its thing. And that's how you run it headlessly. So I'm going to exit out of it. OK. So, but if I want to now, let's say I was running this in a CI environment, right? I would want this whole test to be recorded to the dashboard. And the way I do that is I can use the record command, but I'm going to pass in this key. This is a key that's unique to this project. And I'm going to run it now with the key. And it's going to start running this test. Okay, now it's started. Now I can go to my dashboard right here and just refresh just in case. This to the MVC app. So you can see right now it's detected that the test is running. And we're just going to wait on that right there, but we don't have to because I've already ran it a couple times. So let's look at how things look like when a successful test happens. Everything's good, no failures to report. It shows you the spec file that ran, and you can see the output right here, exactly what you would see locally in your standard out. And it provides you a video of the entire test run. I know, they're like that. And you can speed it up, slow it down, download it, share the link with a colleague, stuff like that. And this is how things will look like when things go bad. So remember we had that one test where when the app started, the input box wasn't focused, and Cypress will show us that exact same error we saw right here. And again, we get to see how the standard output looks like. And Cypress automatically takes screenshots when a test fails. So you get to see the exact moment of when your test failed. And over here, I can say like, oh yeah, the cursor is not in the input box, so that makes sense. And you also have access to the video as well. OK. And then another thing that that's really important is that one of the biggest achievements of Cypress has not just been the software, but its documentation. We're pretty proud of it. It's very extensive. It's very good. And I highly suggest you guys go check it out. It should be like your go-to source whenever you're stuck with anything. And so much so that I actually want to show it to you guys right here. So this is the docs. And I really just want to point out the search feature right here. It's really good. Just always use it. It would always help you out. So everything's here, and I suggest you kind of start from the beginning and actually read through stuff. That's what I did, and that's what I like. Okay, and then also we have in the docs a best practices section. So we get a lot of questions like, oh, what's the best way to handle authentication, things like that. We have a whole section for that in the docs, so please check that out. And also, the original creator of Cypress, Brian Mann, he has a great talk on just on best practices. And that's on YouTube. He did it for the CertJS conference. And it's at that link, and I'm sure these slides will be provided. But you can totally search CertJS Cypress, and you would see how things are. And then, so yeah, this is the entire team. Today I've been the humble representative of the team. We're hell-bent on making the best test runner possible and to just make end-to-end testing super simple, because we understand that it's one of those things that has been neglected because it's been kind of scary, right? Especially for beginner developers. They kind of see this end-to-end testing and they see kind of how difficult it is to use, to get started, and they kind of shy away from it, and they don't even do it at the get-go. And what Cypress is kind of trying to do is make end-to-end testing just as easy as unit testing, and that's really one of the goals. So these are all their beautiful faces, and so if you see them, they're Cypress people. And so thank you, appreciate it. Go ahead and try it out. Thank you.
Dr. Amir, thank you very much. I'm not even going to try and say your last name. Thank you very much. It was a great talk.